as you heard, for a company called OutSystems. You may not have heard of OutSystems, but many of you will have heard of low code as a way of delivering software in a more productive way. I am also here with our partner Phoenix DX, who invited me to talk at this event. So we in Australia have hundreds of customers, and most of their applications are built by partners. And so I just wanted to say a couple of things about Phoenix DX. One of the great things about Phoenix DX, they only work with our technology. So they started about the same time I did with OutSystems almost 10 years ago in Australia. And in our community, we recognise professionals who work with our platform. They're called MVPs. And Phoenix is the only company actually with 6 of these most valued professionals working in their organisation. We trust them to deliver on any use case in our platform, including things that you would only think are possible with traditional code. And I'll show you some examples. But before we get to that, I just want to talk a little bit about AI, but in a different angle. I think people have been exposed to Gen AI enough now for quite a bit of scepticism to sort of seep into the room, and I'm going to focus on 2 areas of AI in particular that OutSystems has a strategic focus on. The first is building applications that incorporate agentic features, something which I'm sure almost all of you are looking at. And the other one is vibe coding, the use of AI to build applications. Also something which I know a lot of organisations here are looking at. I'll start with agentic. Now, I don't know how many of you have seen this article. It was published fairly recently by MIT Press, and the headline was 95% of AI pilots fail. Now, if you actually dig into the article, it's quite interesting because it does highlight a number of issues. And one of the key points is it's actually not the fundamental Gen AI technology itself. There's certainly a human element to why these projects are not working, as well as how they're being approached and the technology being used to support and, importantly, to govern them. Okay? And we have analysed some of the key areas already that are causing challenges in agentic. Let me just go through the top 4 that we've identified. Data is probably one of the top ones. It's actually very challenging for organisations to get all the data that they need to build agentic applications. And as any of you know, when you've used something like ChatGPT, it will not give you an accurate answer unless it's got the context that it needs for that answer as well. So to stop introducing bias or to stop it from hallucinating, data is really key. The next one is around more generally AI governance, and this is an area where we are seeing big challenges in how AI is being rolled out in organisations. Almost every product has AI in it now. Gartner talks about sprinkling AI fairy dust over your ecosystem, and that's good to a degree. You're getting the benefits, but the problem is you're not leveraging AI effectively across your organisation with that approach. Imagine if you had AI that could understand your entire product and services catalogue. You want to be able to leverage that across multiple parts of your value chain, and if you are decentralising that, it becomes very difficult to leverage that knowledge base across AI in multiple use cases. So centralised governance is important. The most common pattern I'm seeing organisations use to implement AI currently is around workflow automation. A classic one is ticket deflection. Support tickets come in, they go through a workflow process, and steps in that process get automated or semi-automated by Gen AI. That needs to be done in a controlled way. We have a best practice at OutSystems for tracking that, analysing what is the current time and cost of the workflow, and as we incrementally improve that, we substitute in tasks, we keep a human in the loop to make sure it's safe, and we incrementally change the process. But that's only half of it. The other thing that we're doing is tracking token usage so that we can ensure that the cost of actually improving it with AI is actually outweighing the original process cost as well, that we're actually seeing the tangible benefits, and we're tracking that in real time. And that's really important because a lot of companies are not seeing or not being able to track that ROI. The last bit is user interface, and this has got a couple of angles to it. We believe the most common pattern is to keep a human in the loop. Often humans are content creators, they're turning more into content reviewers. And that's really what human in the loop is all about. And so you need a UI, obviously, to do that. You're building user interfaces, but user interfaces themselves are also evolving. They're becoming a lot more personalized. You need a platform that can deliver that. So this takes me to the next point, which is, well, I haven't even talked about what OutSystems is. We are a platform to build across this software stack of data, UI, workflow, and we have governance. If you look at the 4 columns here, the ability to build across the full stack is absolutely key, and I'll talk about this a bit more when we do the vibe coding section. Integration. You're all in enterprises with a rich ecosystem. You need to be able to plug into what you've already got. Agentic and vibe coding don't exist in a silo. Now, the third point is also really important. When people talk about vibe coding or low code, it's all about code. In fact, you know that a lot of the costs in your IT organisation are nothing to do with actually just writing code. It's the deployment, it's the infrastructure, it's the security and assurance that you need around it, which take a lot of the time and budget. And that is also part of the platform. So having that all laid across is very important. Now, let's see what the types of benefits are. This is actually pre-AI. Okay, so these are the typical benefits that Phoenix DX and OutSystems would see on projects. As you would expect with a low-code platform, the whole raison d'etre of low-code is we're more productive. But I want to highlight one key point here. Other than, these are not just productivity benefits in terms of 6 to 10 times faster to market for a single app. These are ongoing benefits. One of the big problems I've seen in IT for a long time is the more you build, the slower it gets. We see the opposite effect with low code because it's a platform that can curate and manage applications, makes it easier to find. We see the opposite effect. It emphasizes reusability. The more you build, the faster you get. Now, here are 4 of the use cases, just to give you a bit of an idea of the variety and scope of what Phoenix DX has delivered on the OutSystems platform. Very recently, in fact, Victoria Police have digitised their infringement notices system. This is everything from a mobile app that the officer uses in the field to issue infringements through to all of the back-end workflow and integration into multiple back-end systems. If any of you work in government, you look at the time frame of that, built in 9 months, this is actually in production in 9 months, you will understand that a large system in a police force, this is unheard of, that they can get this into production. And I want to point out, this isn't just the build of the product, which is technically complex. This includes all of the security validation and sign-off as well, which, as you can imagine, in a police force is extremely stringent. They have to follow the ISM controls and have to meet protected standard for those. A simpler example, GPT, which is a commercial property manager. They have SAP. Like a lot of organisations, they realise it's a great platform, but it's not a very agile platform. And so to build their CapEx approval workflow and to enable also mobile on that, they extended it with OutSystems. It's a very common pattern that we see. Pepper Money, a non-bank lender, has multiple product systems. Like a lot of organisations I work with in the finance space, everything is siloed. They wanted to build a customer portal, and initially they looked at their CRM. as being the main technology for that. But the CRM itself was not that easy to extend. What they really needed was actually something that sat above not just the product systems, but also the CRM to really give a 360-degree customer view. So they built that single source of truth in 6 months. And finally, Coats, you may not have heard of. They do equipment management, and they do things like, for instance, if you're going to disassemble an oil rig or something like that, they will lend and sequence the project for all of the equipment that you need. They had built their own internal ERP over 25 years, and you can imagine what that probably looked like from a technology standpoint, and they needed to replace it. It was just too slow to change. And OutSystems was used to completely build from scratch a new ERP in 12 months. Now, what I want you to take from this is really two things. The range of use cases is extremely broad. This is not the sort of stuff that you would think low code can do. And the time frames are all very aggressive. Now, let's look at what customers are doing on top of that with agentic. So these are a few of the use cases that our Agent Workbench, a capability in OutSystems, is adding in, especially to streamline operations. So you take the visual environment which OutSystems uses, and one of the key use cases that we're building out for customers is employee onboarding. There's a lot of documentation in the employee onboarding process that needs to be validated and submitted to other systems. Second use case, contracts. Again, comparing contract details, checking that they meet all of our policies. This, again, cannot be necessarily fully automated, but there's a large opportunity here too. Fraudulent transactions. There are massive problems with scams and fraudulent transactions. Again, a lot of the use cases that we're seeing in the banking sector are focused on that. That's just a subset of where customers are taking their existing applications that they've built on our platform and they have added agentic capabilities. They're not necessarily rewriting everything wholesale, but they're augmenting. All right, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about vibe coding. So has anyone here actually built an app using AI? Yeah, there's a few. I do too. I built it with traditional code. It blows me away. It's really cool. But think about it in the enterprise space. So I saw a video about building apps in the enterprise space, and it made me a bit concerned about how we actually do it. Now, I've spoken to a number of customers and they're like, I don't need low code. AI is going to build apps for me now. And that's based on the assumption that AI is only being applied to traditional coding. It's also helping low code platforms. The problem is, when you vibe code an app, enterprises need more than just something that AI can generate quickly. We want to apply AI not just to the coding part. We want to apply it through the whole life cycle. Because as I said, a lot of the benefits we already get from OutSystems pre-AI were because it's a full software lifecycle platform. You also need something that just builds more than just an agentic bot. There's a whole app that has to fit around it. So you need to be thinking about agentic and what's the rest of the data, the UI that goes along with it. But the third point is probably the key one. There's a lot of concern out there with security and privacy of the apps. How do you get the assurance that what's being vibe coded is safe? So the enterprise guardrails that are already built into a platform are absolutely critical. And then the fourth point, which I want to stress, and this is one that people are becoming more cognizant of, is anything vibe coded needs to be enterprise aware. And what I mean by that is, I talked about you having an ecosystem, data, APIs, UI components. You don't want your vibe coded app to be built in a silo. It should take advantage of all of those AI assets that are there. Okay? And those are the principles that we've used at OutSystems to build our own vibe coding tool that is enterprise ready, that meets all of these requirements. Now, I want to make this real for you and show you what it looks like. So we call it Mentor, and when you use Mentor, all you need to do to start off with is, in fact, before you get to coding, is you type in what kind of app am I building? And you can upload a requirements document. Okay, so we don't even, no coding here. It will then build out the data model, the roles, the screens. And if you see the little blue blobs, we've picked up the fact that Salesforce is already there and we'll incorporate it. Now we're looking at the screens that have been built by the app and the workflows that have been built. And it's not just static, you can still go in and modify this. Now, what I want to point out here is this app that is being built is not a throwaway prototype. This is built production ready on a cloud native platform. And the value of it isn't just that you can build this app in a couple of minutes. It's you can get business and IT in the same room collaborating on a real app rather than in separate rooms for months thinking about how are they going to do it. And we see that as one of the biggest barriers. All right, now I have an offer to everyone in the room. This all sounds really good, but what does it look like for you? If you want to see your app come to life this afternoon, you can scan this code, tell us what it is, and we'll build it for you, and you can come and have a look. In fact, if you don't have time this afternoon, we'll set up a call and we can show you what the app does. Now, as I said, think about what this can do to change your organisation. I was working with an insurer last week, and they were like, well, we're building this new app, but we're not kind of sure what the requirements are yet. They built 6 versions of it in about 15 minutes, and the business said, oh, that's the one I want. I'll chuck the other 5 away. Full stack cloud native apps, 15 minutes for 6 versions. It changes the equation. If you're talking to your CIO and he says, oh, I like this app, you go, hang on, let me just build the foundation app for you. So it's a very powerful way, as I said, not just of building something fast, improving the speed, but getting that interaction going. All right, so hopefully, even if you don't want to build something today, please come and have a chat to myself and to Phoenix DX outside of the booth, and we can talk in more detail around how we make AI real. Thank you very much.